Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cone back here again today with another video. If you're an NBA fan, you probably fear the Golden State Warriors, or you have at some point, as long as you've been a fan for more than like 2 seasons. When the Golden State Warriors were on their 5 straight years to the final run, they were terrifying. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, names and a team that really just struck fear into the entire league because they seemed unbeatable for a while, especially when they had Kevin Durant. Eventually, KD left after getting injured. Klay Thompson went down with injuries, and for the last couple seasons, the Warriors have been Like they're not terrifying or anything like that. The season before this one, they were mediocre due to losing Steph Curry for most of the year, and of course not having Klay Thompson. And then this year, Steph Curry was a monster, one of, if not the best player in the NBA at this point in his career. Draymond Green was near Defensive Player of the Year. The team looked like they were on the come up. Ultimately, they fell just short of making the playoffs due to a really lackluster supporting cast around those two guys. But the Warriors might be coming back. And the reason I say that is because the more that I think about this Golden State Warriors team, the more that I think about the way that trades work in the NBA, the more that I think the Golden State Warriors are going to end up with another star to add to a roster which already has Steph and Draymond, and will be adding a Klay Thompson back to its roster. Klay's a guy coming off major injuries. He's missed back-to-back full seasons now with season-ending injuries. But Klay Thompson is a guy that I think is going to be fine coming off of injuries. He's probably not going to be the same player that we've seen in the past, dropping 60 points in 3 quarters right away. But he's a guy who's never really relied on his athleticism. He's always just been one of the most gifted shooters of all time, a solid defensive player. Klay Thompson's going to be fine. Klay Thompson's still going to be really good, especially when he has Steph Curry by his side. So you add Klay Thompson back to Steph and Draymond, and you've already got a really solid team, a team that is going to make the playoffs next season, with assuming they add a couple role players here and there, or they've got 2 top 14 picks that they could use to add role players. But the more that I think about it, the more that I feel like it's really going to come down to the Golden State Warriors are going to add a really, really good player, a star, all-star level player this offseason. Who's it going to be? I have no idea. I genuinely don't. There are a couple names I could talk about, but when you just look at the NBA, the main thing I want to look at is the James Harden trade. James Harden could have been traded anywhere in the league. He asked for a trade. Of course, he had a preferred destination, and that was Brooklyn. You had other teams like the Heat and the Sixers that were offering good packages, but most of the time when a player wants to get somewhere, they usually get there. Probably the biggest example of a player not getting really where he wanted to go was Kawhi. Kawhi wanted to be sent to Los Angeles and instead got sent to Toronto and did end up going somewhere else afterwards. But most of the time, in this modern era of teams kind of helping players out, especially when it's a guy that's been around for a while, like some of the biggest trade names that are kind of floating around in rumors are, teams want to do right by that player. Even if they ask for a trade, teams want to do right by that player so they look good to future free agents, future stars, whatever you want to go with. So, if a guy asks to go to the Warriors, there's a good chance they could get sent there for 2 reasons. Number 1, a lot of guys are going to want to go to the Warriors. If I'll throw a name out there, a Bradley Beal, and I want to be traded, I'm talking about him because as of today, he was one of the main guys that has now been mentioned in trade rumors. There's a rumor going around that he's going to ask for a trade. I don't know if that's true or not, but he is a guy that for like the past 19 off seasons, it's felt like even before he was in the league, people were talking about Bradley Beal getting traded, it feels like. So once again, he's come up in rumors, and there was a list of teams that he wanted to go to, and the Warriors were on that list. If I'm Bradley Beal, I'm already getting paid. I want to get paid and win a championship. Why would I not want to go play with Steph Curry, the guy who just barely beat me out for the scoring title? Imagine those 2 guys scoring on the same team. Draymond Green, who is a Defensive Player of the Year level guy still to this day, and a good playmaker who can get you some shots, and Klay Thompson coming back, who can help out with the defensive side of the ball and can also score the hell out of the basketball. Why would I not want to go play there? A team that's been dominant very recently to help try and rebuild that and bring a championship back to Golden State. Why would I not want to do that? So that's one reason why I could see a star getting traded there. 2, despite the Warriors having a really solid but a solid cast of guys returning, they didn't make the playoffs, and they ultimately having 2 lottery picks and James Wiseman, who was just the 2nd overall pick, the Warriors have kind of had a perfect storm, and they have one of the better trade packages in the entire NBA. They don't have that like young star level player, but Wiseman being the 2nd overall pick, not like 4 years ago, not like 3 years ago, last year, James Wiseman was the 2nd overall pick, and for good reason. He's really talented, and he's got a lot. The sky is the limit for James Wiseman. He just doesn't quite fit their timeline at the moment. So I wouldn't be surprised if they moved him. And if you call up a team and you're like, hey, we can give you James Wiseman, a former 2nd overall pick, the 7th pick in this stacked draft class, and the 14th pick also in this stacked draft class, as well as a few of their future picks because they've got all of those, teams probably aren't going to say no to that. If their guy wants to go there and that's an offer that they're getting, that's a great offer for a star level guy. If you can get a young piece to build around, a ton of draft picks, and you can add a couple young pieces to build around in this draft class itself with 2 lottery picks, that's a great deal. Because you don't have to wait, you don't have to worry about those picks possibly not conveying. Like, for example, the Thunder trade for a ton of Clippers picks. While that's a lot of picks, and I'm sure some are going to be good, there is a timeline where those are all just like late 20s picks and it doesn't matter. If you're trading a star and you want to get into your rebuild like right now, you are guaranteed 2 lottery picks off the bat. That's a really good package. So, what are some of the names they could get? I talked about Bradley Beal. There's a report that Bradley Beal is going to ask for a trade coming soon, and that Russell Westbrook might also be on the way out. I've been a guy who has been advocating, saying that the Wizards probably should trade those 2 guys, because I think right now is the highest value that either of those guys, especially Westbrook, who's a guy who right now is at a really high value after a couple seasons ago being seen as a guy that was on a really bad contract. Russ proved he can still play really, really well, and I'm not going to risk a potential injury, or maybe he has a down year compared to this year next season. I would move him right now while his value's high, and while this core feels like it's capped out. They were missing Thomas Bryant for most of the season. They could try and add a 3rd star, but I really don't think that buying into this core heavily is the way to go. I would trade Russ, and Bradley Beal was just the 2nd leading scorer in the NBA. I'd get what I could for them. I'd go into a rebuild, see what happens. You've got some pieces. If you got like a trade from the Warriors and you end up with Wiseman, you've got a young center. You've got Denny Avdija. You've got the 7th and 14th overall picks in this year's draft. That's such a good start to your rebuild. That's something I would consider doing if I'm the Wizards. You could also talk about like a Damian Lillard. I know this seems ridiculous that Dame could end up on the Warriors, but if you are the Blazers and you're looking to start a rebuild now, you don't want to wait like way into the future. You can add a Wiseman, you can add a 7 and a 14, you could add future draft picks, and then it's just got to be salary matching. There's some trade to be made there. And then you end up trading McCollum and Yusuf Nurkic, and you have a ton of assets to start your rebuild already with 2 lottery picks and a former 2nd overall pick. That's not a bad trade at all. Well, of course, it's going to have to be a lot of draft picks because it's Damian Lillard. And we've seen in the past with the Anthony Davis trade and the Paul George trade, we've seen how much it takes to get these high-level guys on your team. It would take a lot. But if I'm Dame and I want to go somewhere, I'm looking at Golden State. I get to play alongside Steph Curry, who I've been compared to a lot, 2 top 10 players in the NBA, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, who are 2 good defensive players that can help that somewhat subpar defensive backcourt, and I can compete for a ring. That's somewhere that I'm looking. If I'm a Pascal Siakam, who hasn't necessarily requested a trade, but it kind of seems like there's a report that he's available to teams. If I'm the Raptors, I'm trading Pascal Siakam. I'm rebuilding. I'm not going to try and compete if I'm trading Pascal Siakam. If I'm trying to compete, I'm adding a guy next to Pascal Siakam. So if the Warriors offer up like a 7 and a 14, or just like a 7 and like a Wiseman or something like that, I am definitely taking that if I'm trying to rebuild, if I'm the Raptors. Siakam was great, but if I'm trying to like restart this thing, do a sign and trade with Kyle Lowry, deal off Pascal Siakam, and I end up with a lottery pick, a James Wiseman who can replace Siakam in that front court, I'm good. I'm good with that trade. And Siakam would fit so well on that Warriors team too. Steph, Klay, you have Draymond at like the 4. You could run Siakam as a small ball 5, which I think would work perfectly. I think Siakam can do that. You maybe you keep like a Kelly Oubre to play that 3, and you've got a really, really dangerous team. He would fit that team phenomenally. You could even think about like a Colin Sexton if you're the Warriors, who has probably a much cheaper price than some of those other guys that I've named. Maybe you just give them like a couple of draft picks. You don't even have to give up James Wiseman if the Cavs are really looking to move on from Sexton. You add a great scorer who can help Steph Curry out, because that was the biggest issue that this team had, was no one could really help Steph Curry. Not only do you add Sexton in that case, but you add Klay Thompson. The Warriors are going to be really good next season. That's my take right now. I think the Warriors are going to trade for one of these star-level guys and be phenomenal next year. The Western Conference looks pretty wide open. The Phoenix Suns are a team that's kind of in limbo. We'll see if Chris Paul comes back. The Lakers are, of course, going to be a powerhouse, but that's if they can stay healthy. Kawhi Leonard, even if he re-signs with the Clippers, will probably miss most of, if not all of next season. The Mavericks are a team that's on the come up. The Nuggets are going to be without Jamal Murray. The Trailblazers, who knows if they're going to have Dame. The Western Conference is in flux right now. If I'm the Warriors, this is a perfect storm of assets. You need to make a move to help Steph now. And I think that's what they're going to do. And I think some team is going to look at that trade package. It's going to be too good for them to pass up to enter that rebuild state, and they're going to do it. Come back to this video if it happens, but I think the Golden State Warriors are going to trade for a star, an all-star caliber player to put next to Steph, to put next to Draymond, to put next to Klay Thompson in this year's offseason. I think that's the way things are going to go. Whether or not it happens before or after the draft, I'm not sure. We could definitely see a situation where like we have like an Andrew Wiggins for Kevin Love type deal that we saw when LeBron came back to Cleveland, where Wiggins got drafted by the Cavs but was drafted to then be traded to the Timberwolves for a Kevin Love to add on to their roster. We could see something like that. So even if we don't see the trade happening before the draft, it could still happen. So be on the lookout for that, and don't say I didn't warn you when the Warriors come back and decide to be ridiculously good again next season. That's all I have to say about this. Let me know what you think about the concept of the Warriors getting another star. I just feel like it's inevitable. Maybe this is just my Warriors PTSD from them getting Kevin Durant, coming back from when they got DeMarcus Cousins out of nowhere in that one offseason before the 2019 season. Who knows? I appreciate you guys watching this video. Let me know what trade ideas you could see for some of those players I mentioned in the comment section. Do you think the Warriors will end up with a star? Do you think the Warriors are going to be as good as I think they're going to be next season? I think they're going to be really, really damn good. Appreciate y'all watching. I'll see you guys later. Real One, say it back.